The title may have made you laugh or gasp or lean in closer, and that's exactly the point, because truth rarely shows up wearing polite shoes. It walks in barefoot, raw, and unfiltered. Now let me tell you what this is really about. This is not a speech about sex. This is a speech about something far more powerful: devotion, intimacy, the kind of loyalty that doesn't just speak, it acts. See, a woman who chooses to serve her husband, even in the most private, sacred ways, is not submissive. She is strong. Not because she has to, but because she wants to. Because she understands that intimacy isn't just physical. It's emotional warfare fought with love, trust, and vulnerability. In a world where relationships are breaking at the speed of selfishness, the woman who gives herself freely, without shame, is not weak. She is wise. She is rare. She is a healer of her home. In the quiet spaces between a husband and wife, far from the noise of the world and the distractions of everyday life, there exists a sacred bond, a place where love sheds its outer garments and stands bare, vulnerable, and true. Intimacy in its purest form is not merely about the act of sex. It is about connection, surrender, and deep-rooted devotion. It is a language spoken in silence, a touch, a gaze, a breath shared in the dark. And for a woman who chooses to honor her man with her full self, even in the most intimate ways, it becomes a ritual, a sacred act of devotion that transcends the physical and touches the spiritual. To give oneself intimately is to say without words, "I trust you." It is to let down the walls built by past hurts, societal expectations, and self-doubt, and to enter a space where masks are removed and souls meet. In a world that often teaches women to withhold, to protect, to negotiate love like a business transaction, the woman who leans in, who gives freely, not because she's forced, but because she chooses to, is engaging in one of the highest forms of trust and power. True intimacy requires vulnerability. It requires a woman to look her partner in the eyes and say, "You can have me, not just my body, but my presence, my attention, my affection." In that offering, she is not being submissive. She is stepping into her own strength, wielding it not as a weapon, but as a gift. She is saying, "I am safe with you, and you are safe with me." That safety becomes the soil in which love grows its deepest roots. This kind of intimacy doesn't begin in the bedroom, it begins in the heart. It is cultivated through kindness, through listening, through the quiet support offered during moments of weakness. It is built over years of showing up, of choosing each other again and again, even when the fire dims or life becomes overwhelming. And when that emotional foundation is strong, physical intimacy becomes something more than passion. It becomes sacred. When a woman chooses to engage intimately with her husband, especially through acts that are often considered taboo or provocative by society, she is not lowering herself, she is elevating the relationship. She is recognizing that within the private sanctuary of a committed bond, there is power in pleasure, there is healing in touch, and there is transformation in surrender. What may appear physical on the outside becomes spiritual on the inside. It becomes worship not of the man, but of the union, of the sacred space they share. This kind of giving requires a woman to be deeply in tune with her own worth. She cannot give freely if she believes she is being used. She must know that her body is not an object, but an instrument of love, of warmth, of joy. And when she does, when she brings her full self into that moment with no shame, no guilt, only presence and power, she turns a physical act into a spiritual offering. It is easy to confuse sacred intimacy with submission, but they are worlds apart. Submission is rooted in fear or obligation. Sacred intimacy is rooted in love. It says, "I see you, I choose you, I give to you because it brings me joy to do so." In this space, both man and woman are uplifted. The man feels seen, desired, honored, not just for what he does, but for who he is. The woman feels powerful, connected, radiant, not because she pleases someone else, but because she stands fully in her feminine strength. And let us not forget, men crave intimacy not just in the body, but in the soul. When a woman gives herself with intention, with care, with reverence, It awakens something in a man that no surface-level pleasure ever could. It speaks to his core, tells him he is valued, that he matters, that he is home. And when a man feels that kind of intimacy, he doesn't just take, it inspires him to give back tenfold. He becomes more gentle, more attentive, more committed. In this divine exchange, intimacy becomes a mirror. It reflects the health of the relationship, the depth of love, the presence of trust. It is a daily choice, a sacred dance, a mutual surrender that strengthens the bond like nothing else. Sexual confidence is not just about physical appearance or performance. It is a reflection of something far deeper. Emotional security. When a woman walks into a room, into a relationship, or into the arms of her partner with a quiet fire in her eyes and comfort in her skin, what you're witnessing is not just confidence. You're seeing the visible proof that she feels safe, seen, and accepted at her core. That kind of confidence cannot be faked. It grows in the soil of trust, in the warmth of a relationship where judgment is absent and understanding is present. Emotional security allows a woman to express herself without fear. She does not worry about being compared, criticized, or misunderstood. She is not performing, she is participating. In that space of safety, where love is consistent and respect is mutual, she is free to explore, to give, to ask, and to receive. She knows that her body is not being measured, is being cherished. She knows that her voice matters, her desires are valid, and her boundaries are honored. From that emotional foundation springs a sexual confidence that is both magnetic and deeply rooted. For many women, sexual expression is tied not just to desire, but to worth. If she feels emotionally neglected, criticized, or unappreciated, her sensuality begins to retreat, not because it's gone, but because it no longer feels safe to emerge. But when a man creates an environment of emotional warmth, when he listens, affirms, and remains consistent in his presence, the woman naturally begins to unfold. She reveals not just her body, but her essence. She shows sides of herself that only bloom when nourished by love without condition. Sexual confidence, then, is a mirror. It reflects how emotionally stable the relationship is and how emotionally whole the woman feels within it. It is not about arrogance or promiscuity. It is about knowing who she is, knowing what she brings to the table, and not being ashamed to bring it fully. When she laughs without restraint, moves without apology, and loves without hesitation, you are looking at a woman who is emotionally safe and secure. This kind of confidence also creates a positive feedback loop. When a woman feels secure, she becomes more expressive. When she is expressive, the relationship deepens. And as the relationship deepens, emotional safety grows stronger. It becomes a cycle of trust, openness, and mutual discovery. A man who values his partner's emotional landscape and nurtures it with care finds himself partnered with a woman whose sexuality is alive, joyful, and free. Confidence in the bedroom is not born in the bedroom. It is born in the everyday gestures, the small affirmations, the consistent love shown when no one is watching. It is shaped by how a man looks at her when she's not dressed up, how he listens when she's tired, how he holds space when she's vulnerable. Mutual pleasure in a marriage is more than just shared physical satisfaction. It is the active expression of love, respect, and emotional equality. When both partners are attentive not only to their own desires, but also to each other's fulfillment, a unique kind of intimacy is formed, one that strengthens the bond beyond words. Pleasure, when mutual, is not selfish. It becomes a shared language of connection, trust, and deep emotional investment. In many relationships, pleasure can become one-sided over time. Responsibilities, stress, or unspoken frustrations can lead one partner to give while the other receives without awareness or gratitude. Over time, this imbalance creates quiet resentment, emotional distance, and a sense of being unseen. But when both partners prioritize each other's joy and satisfaction inside and outside the bedroom, a shift happens. The relationship becomes a partnership in the truest sense. It evolves from a place of routine and obligation into a space of exploration, giving, and emotional revival. Mutual pleasure requires presence. It demands that both individuals show up fully, not distracted, not disconnected, but engaged. It is an act of attentiveness, of listening not just with ears, but with intuition. A husband who takes time to understand his wife's body, her rhythm, her needs, is telling her, "You matter to me. Your joy is my joy." A wife who responds with the same awareness, who chooses to care for and delight in her husband, mirrors that same message. This back and forth creates a rhythm of giving and receiving that spills over into other parts of the relationship. When couples make space for mutual pleasure, they also make space for honesty. Vulnerability becomes easier because neither partner feels used or overlooked. There is freedom to speak desires, to explore fantasies, to laugh, to experiment, and to grow together. This kind of freedom builds emotional security and reinforces the idea that both partners are on the same team, not just surviving marriage, but thriving in it. Beyond physical satisfaction, mutual pleasure strengthens emotional intimacy. It creates a sense of belonging, a reminder that each person is still wanted, still desired, still valued, especially in long-term relationships. This reminder is vital. It keeps the spark alive, not just by keeping sex active, but by keeping connection intentional. When both husband and wife feel deeply seen and fully appreciated in their most vulnerable state, the bond between them grows unshakable. In addition, mutual pleasure teaches both partners to be less self-centered and more empathetic. It becomes a daily practice of asking, what can I do to make you feel good, safe, loved? This mindset transforms how they speak to each other, how they handle conflict, and how they invest in the relationship. It's no longer about meeting needs out of duty, but about delighting in the act of giving. A marriage that honors mutual pleasure is a marriage built on equality, generosity, and presence. It is a space where two people come together not just to meet expectations, but to exceed them through love expressed in its most human form. Giving without shame is one of the most powerful expressions of love a woman can offer. It requires a deep sense of self-worth, emotional strength, and personal freedom. When a woman gives to her husband, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, without guilt, hesitation, or fear of judgment, she is not weak or submissive. She is powerful, because she is operating from a place of internal security rather than external approval. She knows who she is, and she knows that her act of giving does not diminish her, it magnifies her. Shame has long been used to control women's expressions of love and sensuality. It whispers that to give too much is to be needy, that to show desire is to be improper, and that to serve with joy is somehow to lose independence. But a woman who is truly free understands that none of these things are true. She knows that giving from the heart is not a loss of power, but a declaration of it. She gives because she wants to, not because she has to. She chooses to love fully, without filters, because it aligns with her truth, not with anyone else's expectations. This kind of giving is not reckless or desperate. It is intentional. It is grounded in love, in care, and in the understanding that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a sacred strength. To give without shame is to say, I see you, and I am not afraid to be seen in return. It is to open one's heart and body without apology. It is to trust that being generous in love does not make one less, it makes one more. In the context of marriage, this principle is transformative. When a wife gives herself fully, whether through physical intimacy, emotional openness, acts of service, or words of affirmation, she creates a powerful ripple effect. Her husband feels loved in a way that words cannot fully express. He feels chosen, not just tolerated. He feels desired, not just accepted. This kind of giving builds a foundation of loyalty, trust, and deep emotional security. And when giving is mutual, when both partners serve each other without shame or scorekeeping, a marriage becomes unbreakable. It becomes a partnership where neither is afraid to go first, to give more, to love deeper. The fear of being taken for granted dissolves because the relationship is not built on conditions, but on commitment. There is immense power in the woman who knows she is enough. She doesn't wait for permission to love deeply or to express herself fully. She doesn't hide her passion or her tenderness. She doesn't view her ability to give as something to suppress, but something to honor. Her generosity is not a sign of weakness, but of courage. It takes courage to love in a world that often teaches us to protect, to withhold, to guard. And it takes even greater strength to give without shame, to trust that love, when given freely, always returns in some form. Modern love exists in a world filled with distractions, comparisons, and emotional armor. In a time where appearances are curated and feelings are filtered, true connection has become rare. Not because love has disappeared, but because vulnerability has. To love deeply today, to build something lasting and real, requires a kind of boldness that many shy away from. It requires the courage to show up fully, to speak honestly, and to risk being seen without a mask. Vulnerability is not a weakness in modern love. It is the foundation of its strength. In the past, relationships often followed clear roles and expectations. There was structure, tradition, and a sense of societal duty. But in today's world, where people are more independent, more self-focused, and more skeptical of commitment, love must be chosen deliberately and nurtured with intention. It is no longer sustained by obligation, it is sustained by connection. And connection only happens when two people are brave enough to be emotionally naked with each other. Bold vulnerability is the willingness to say, "This is who I am, flaws, fears, desires, and all, and I still choose to love you with my whole heart." It is not just about expressing emotions, it's about owning them. It's about admitting when you're scared, when you feel insecure, when you need reassurance. It's also about speaking your truth when it's uncomfortable, setting boundaries with kindness, and loving someone without needing to control them. That level of openness requires a deep level of self-trust, and even deeper trust in the other person. When a couple embraces this kind of vulnerability, their relationship becomes a place of safety. It becomes a sanctuary where both people can drop the act, where love is not earned through perfection but received through presence. In that space, intimacy thrives, not just sexual intimacy, but emotional, intellectual, and spiritual closeness. When you're not afraid to share what's real, you give your partner permission to do the same. That honesty builds a bond that no surface-level attraction can replicate. Modern love also requires vulnerability because we are constantly tempted to hide. Social media offers endless distractions and illusions. It's easy to scroll through highlight reels of other people's lives and feel like yours doesn't measure up. It's easy to shut down, to pretend, to avoid. But real love cannot survive in hiding. It needs presence. It needs truth. It needs two people willing to take off their emotional armor and face each other with open hearts. Being vulnerable in love doesn't mean being weak or overly emotional. It means being strong enough to let someone in. It means risking pain for the possibility of joy and trusting that even if things get hard, the bond is worth fighting for. It's about saying, "I will not run. I will not fake it. I will not guard myself to the point of isolation. I will love with my eyes open and my heart on the line." That kind of love is rare, but it is real, and it is the only kind that lasts.